Okay, so I learned something interesting. Maybe this isn't
Spit it
exactly
out.
true. Maybe like some of the details are lost
Okay.
in like turning this into kind of like a an interesting quippy story. But
Mm-hmm.
I heard that uh Charles Darwin, his voyage on the HMS Beagle, like his role on
Right.
the
Okay.
HMS Beagle, was more about keeping the captain company than about an actual scientific journey.
Interesting.
So this is my understanding is that, and whether or not it's true doesn't really matter because it's a
Mm-hmm.
really fun idea and I think it's something that we can use that would be really cool. Is that the captain of this ship is someone from a higher class,
Mm-hmm.
is more sophisticated and has a bunch of rabble sailors that
Right.
he can't relate to, he can't get along with, probably doesn't, probably has some prejudice against because
Right.
of class differences. And then basically in order to not go insane on his voyage,
Mm-hmm.
hires a gentleman to keep him
Mm-hmm.
company, who, maybe you give some kind of excuse of something else that they're going to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
like you can come and be a collector, right? But like really the point of this is that this is someone there who's probably getting a
I need a
better,
friend.
who's, yeah, exactly, I need a friend, like he's probably getting a better rate
Mm-hmm.
than he really should, and is there to keep the owner or the person running the
Mm-hmm.
operation company. And I think that's just a really interesting angle that I don't think most people would think of, because they're
Mm-hmm.
thinking just like, okay, who do you need on a ship? What are the different roles that people need to do? How are we
Mm-hmm.
going to do this? And you don't
And
think,
a
yeah.
scientist.
And this is a good way to like fit in weird characters
Mm-hmm.
into places. So like let's say you have like a big journey overland on a Silk Road kind of thing, right? And it's, someone needs someone to keep them company,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a platonic sense, right?
Right.
And I think that would be a really fun way to like, maybe this is a very a very common trope for starting a campaign is like you're
Mm-hmm.
all traveling together on something. This is a way to fit a weird, interesting character into there. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're the person keeping the only other civilized and high class person
Mm.
company on this journey. Uh, and I just thought that was a really neat
Yeah.
idea, and I wrote
And
that
like
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
and in an adventuring party, it could be as simple as like one guy's got a quest and he's bringing, his two best friends and
Mm-hmm.
a couple of strong boys
Yeah.
along, and will compensate them, right? Like it's a way to just like kind of bind the party together, and like, yeah, it's not super strong,
Mm-hmm.
but then friendship happens
Yeah.
and all that good stuff.
Yeah, kind of as an aside, one thing that I've found is really fun from playing like a more like science fiction-y games,
Mm-hmm.
particularly Mothership, is this works well when you've got like more experienced role players, I find. But actually making the chain of command and who does what and who's
Mm-hmm.
responsible for what very explicit becomes really fun.
Yeah.
And it's now like another way to interact with people and to like kind of leverage like clout on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could have an adventuring party that is sponsored by one person, like
Mm-hmm.
one guy, and this is something where you don't have to make any fancy rules for this or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. You just have, hey, one player is the sponsor of this, they're rich, but they're spending all their money on this journey, so you're
Mm-hmm.
maybe not going to have a lot in in equipment. um and they're the ones who's like holding everything together. They're the one
Mm-hmm.
that's like, this is what the mission's about, and you can have a lot of fun and a lot of interest
Mm-hmm.
about that, and you can have a lot of fun in the like wavering loyalties of people too,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I definitely think that it is certainly, especially when you go with a hierarchy thing, uh, like player dependent. Because like as a player who like I get antsy pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like if things aren't happening, it's like, yeah, the leader needs to like
Mm-hmm.
one like be relatively like hard headed and like we're going ahead with the thing that we're doing. Um but the leader is also like generous enough to like let people like do the things that they want to do, and like the players can't be legitimately salty,
Right.
but they can be salty in character because that's
Yeah.
fun.
Oh yeah, that's so fun. So I definitely, yeah, that's another thing. There are definitely like certain players that you want to like, not ever, and I
Mm-hmm.
think players usually hopefully they're usually self-aware enough, but if not, you can probably be selecting as a GM where, like, there's probably like two people in every party that are like, okay, these are the two people that could really be the leader, because they're the ones that find fun in being engaged and trying to like determine, what to do forward. And they're also the ones that usually get frustrated by nothing happening. Right. So like you would be a very good choice for someone, because you're also not going to be like stopping other people's fun too.
Right. Like in whenever there's like a situation in a gaming group where it's just like things have come to a standstill, and I find this in more than just gaming groups too, like whether it's like a group project or something, like if there's not a person who's like kind of like taking initiative for things, like the chuckle fucks will chuckle fuck,
Yep.
Like I would never ever, well, maybe not never ever, because Courtney, if you're listening to this, I love you with my whole heart, but like I probably would not make you or Ian a group leader, because you guys would just like faff and we would never get absolutely anywhere. But I think they would both do it, but they definitely have to like break their like League of Evil shenanigans, because like Ian would definitely do it. He would do it in his own weird twisted way. Courtney would do it in a slightly less twisted way. Will could definitely do it. Patrick probably would, but I think Patrick just likes to kind of be along for the ride most of the time.
Yeah. Well, Will can go down like kind of rabbit holes sometimes. That's one thought is that if you do want to have like the drama of having a kind of faffing about leader, then that probably, unless you're like making it explicit with their characters and being like, okay, so like, what if you're the leader, but you're like but this other person's like the real leader, or you could have an NPC be kind of the faffing about leader,
right? And it's like where the leader in quotation marks, and then his most trusted advisor is like, sir, we should probably go to the dungeon. And then the leader's like, we're going to the dungeon. I think that's a really fun dynamic too.
Yeah, because
he's like leader in name only.
Yeah, and or even just like you end up, I think you can have a lot of fun like in just like a character development sense, where like you end up in a different situation and then someone has to take the reins. Like someone has, like the person that is the expert in this particular area has to be like, no, you all need to listen to me. You need to do, and like come out of their comfort zone and no longer be subordinate and now be dominant in a situation. That can be an interesting character development kind of moment.
And it's like everyone else, granted you're playing your character. If your character is flawed, you should probably play into those flaws. But like as a player, like that person's going to have a lot of fun, like playing into that moment, and like you need to defer to that person. Because then everyone has fun and then you move the plot forward. I also think that like the faffing about leader, like coming back around like as a strong leader, is a really cool arc. There's in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the like Earth King or whatever is basically like leader, and he's super dumb, like does whatever he wants, doesn't actually like pay attention to like his the running of his kingdom, and his like secret police basically do it for him. And then once shit goes south, eventually he comes around and he like proves himself to be like a very caring, kind, charismatic individual.
Like he hits his lowest point and then has to learns that he has to like realizes he has to do something and climb out of that point.
Right. And I don't know if there was anything where he was like really at his lowest point, but like it was only in that situation that he was able to like show his colors and like how good of a leader he was, because when everything was great and his secret police were running the thing, he didn't have to do anything. Right. And so that's another thing that you can kind of do, where it's like the leader, quote unquote leader, can be leader in name only, and then eventually like actually become the leader that they the title implies, or they can relegate themselves. I don't know, as long as everyone's having fun, that's what's important. Yeah. I
think this was something that I wanted to bring up this point, because like I often forget about how important class has been in the past, like being an American, right? Like that kind of thing doesn't like it's pretty invisible to us. And I get really into it. I find it really fun because it's definitely like feels medieval. Like it feels like like you're actually like going into a different culture where people care about that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, so that's just something that I find really interesting. And, if
You can put your elitist boots on a little bit.
right. And, it's something where like, it's not going to work with every party, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, but sometimes you can have it there. You can have like you can at least have that. You can have things hinting that is how society works,
Mm-hmm.
and why particular things are in a particular way. Like it's one of those things where like often when I'm world building, I'm trying to figure out like why are things not working here? Like what is the thing that makes
Mm-hmm.
the things not work here, that creates conflict, that creates tension, that
Mm-hmm.
requires the party that either hinders the party or makes the party like have to do something, like
Right.
makes them valuable in that situation. And it's because of some kind of absurdity, like something that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's because like, oh, like it's because like the class is really important to this culture, and they're doing stupid things because of that. They're not they're not
Mm-hmm.
letting they're choosing people who are not right for the job because of
Mm-hmm.
that, or they're not not letting certain things happen.
That sounds like a setting theme.
Mm-hmm.
Classism and the evils therein.
And yeah, so that's just like really, I think that's like a really it's a lever that I forget exists.
Right.
So
And it's weird because it's like, I'd consider myself like middle class American. Like it's
Mhm.
really easy to like not see class stuff until you realize that there are people who play by a different set of rules than you do. They just
Mhm.
happen to have more money and like are largely invisible to you. But when you're playing into a setting where
it would be very
where
visible.
it is very apparent who is on top and who is not, things get get dramatic.
Like in a in a medieval society, like you literally have like different laws for each person, right?
Yep.
And there's so much. It's kind of bizarre, like how I don't know if this is maybe an accurate summation, but looking at a lot of laws, you're just like, damn, these guys are really vain, right? Like
Mhm.
so many of the laws are about like basically what status symbols you can have.
Mhm.
So it's like what kind of clothing you can wear, what kind of what kind of features you can put on your manner or whatnot. And it's specifically about like enforcing class and making it obvious who is what class, or like what like what level of noble you are,
Mhm.
right? And like that was really really important to them. Like they
Mhm.
consider that to be like how they kept their society orderly.
Right.
And it's of course to us like very absurd, and
Mhm.
also very hard to like adjudicate laws around. Like if you're trying to like make laws in your fantasy setting, it can be very
Mhm.
difficult. I've kind of gone back and forth on like having something kind of explicit, or
Mhm.
just like roll dice, find
Mhm.
out like like find out like what bizarre wacky kind of law breaking situation you're in, right?
Mhm.
Because I think that would be where it's like, what's the punishment for doing this particular thing I did? Like literally 2d6, like
Right.
Yeah, like
Good luck. Hopefully you roll a good one.
Like if one side is a fine, the other one is you're beheaded. Like
Right, exactly. Again, Avatar: The Last Airbender, there's a thing where it's like, the Avatar is found guilty of doing this crime when he was in like a different body or whatever,
Mhm.
and they spin a wheel to decide what his fate is, and then he needs to like be boiled in oil, and then plot happens and he doesn't do that. But yeah, it'd be something like that where it's like, well, we're gonna figure out what it is, and it may actually be spinning the wheel of punishment.
Mhm.
What was interesting about your point with the like you can't think of like the explicit laws is that in you and I, we don't see a lot of those like the classist stuff, but you don't need to go that far back in like American history, even in Minneapolis, to like find those. Like there's a lot of like property like lines written into like property deeds where it's like, you will like this property cannot be sold to these kinds of people.
Mhm.
Like that is a thing. I was at the Science Museum recently, and
Right.
they had whole like social sciences thing, and it's like that stuff like exists, and you can extrapolate on that and put it in your setting. And it's interesting that we just don't see it because
Mhm.
like we have never had to like deal with it or been exposed
Right.
to it. But yeah, like you don't gotta dig too far and you'll find it for sure. Like kind of like the religious prosecution stuff that you saw or that you were like looking up. you start digging for stuff,
Yeah,
and there's some wild shit that you can find on Wikipedia.
Right, like just to give you guys some context, like I just learned about like just did some research on like the persecution of Catholics like in England, and it's wild. It's insane. And
like I didn't know this stuff either, and then Greg's telling me, I'm like, it makes sense because people are dicks, but
right, yeah, and
no
it also makes sense because of the the political side of it, where like like there's the Anglican Church, and like if you're
the
not,
Queen is the head of the Anglican Church,
right, and if you're not an Anglican, then you're an enemy of the state, right? Like wild, super interesting. Would recommend. We'll probably have an episode on stuff like that later once I have some more details nailed down on my like monotheistic religion in my setting.
Greg's gotta bury his head in pages of Wikipedia for a couple more months.
Yeah. It's really basically, I'm finally getting to that point where I'm no longer like, that's a cool idea. That's a cool idea. That's a cool idea. That, like, and now I'm like, okay, this is the central idea, and then I can have all the cool ideas around it, right? When before I was just kind of like, what if it's like this, or what if it's like this, or what if it's like this, And
that's how I world build for the most part. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but like when you want nuance, when you want detail, when you want immersion, baby,
right.
That's when that's when you dig in.
It's really because I'm like deciding like, this, like basically because I decide like I'm gonna have one kind of central culture, and that and the setting's gonna be kind of told from that culture, and so everything needs to be sort of like in relation to that. Then it's kind of like, okay, I need to like figure out these details. It's kind of important, right? Because it's like, oh, okay, well now, if I'm trying to figure out what the other is, I have to know what you are, right?
Right. Yeah, you can't figure out the other without the one, kind of a thing.
So I hope this is just a little tidbit,
right?
I figure we just want to get a little more recording time in,
right? We gotta milk the storage space that we get from Libsyn for all it's got.
Yep.
All right.
So thank you for
this
listening.
Has been
I'm Greg. That's Darren.
Yeah, I'm Darren. And this has been a Lore Foundry short.
Woo!
Woo!